Welcome to Alaska EdVenture, Lessons from the K-12 Frontier, with your host, Dr. Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Starborough School District. This podcast is your gateway to the heart of Alaska's educational landscape, where each episode features guests sharing their unique perspectives. We are bringing together voices that shape education in the last frontier. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and innovations in Alaska's K-12 classrooms.
Welcome to Alaska EdVenture. I'm your host, Dr. Luke Meinert, Superintendent of the Fairbanks North Starborough School District. And joining me today is Jennifer Anderson and Mackenzie Staiger. We're going to talk about Alaska Reads and literacy in elementary classrooms. So part 2 of this literacy deep dive, super excited about that. But we're going to take a moment to get to know our guests today and what brought them to this role within the school district, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what literacy is looking like here in Fairbanks. And so, Jennifer, we'll start with you. Thanks for coming on the show today, and would love for you to talk about yourself a little bit.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Jennifer Anderson, and I currently teach first grade at Anween Elementary. And I've taught for several years in the school district now, different grade levels, but have hung out for a while in first grade. And then have been in the district, been serving on the IDEA team that we'll talk about, and really talking a lot about goals for literacy in the school district.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jennifer. Welcome. Rich history here within Fairbanks. And Mackenzie, we'll bounce it over to you.
Well, I'm Mackenzie Staiger, and I've been in the school district since I was 5. So I'm a product.
Just a few years ago, right?
Just last year or so. But I actually started teaching in the school district back in 2002. And I started my career in teaching in early elementary, and then I moved up and I ended my classroom experience in upper elementary. And then I moved into a little bit of admin, and then I went into instructional coaching before I became the elementary curriculum coordinator for the school district. So now I do everything curriculum and assessment.
Yeah.
I also sit with Jennifer on the IDEA team, and we're really focused on literacy right now with the elementary students.
Yeah, well, and I'll say Mackenzie's new to this role. She just started July 1st, just like me, July 1st. So we're newbies in our role. But everything I hear about Mackenzie is that she's absolutely killing it in terms of the support she's providing our teachers and our students, and getting this huge lift off the ground with Alaska Reads. So just want to say thank you for stepping up to this role, because it really is a huge role. You picked a doozy of a year to jump into the role.
I did. Like, you couldn't have probably picked a crazier. So we have Alaska Reads Act implementation, M-Class, the implementation of a brand new English language arts program. Yeah, there's a few things.
Going on,
just
right?
a few things literacy related.
Keep us busy. Yeah.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
You're welcome.
All right. So both of you mentioned the IDEA team. What is the IDEA team?
Well, the IDEA team, it was formed last school year. Actually, we really started meeting the second semester last school year, started by Shane Beam, and he's the director of teaching and learning. And it was created 2 different teams, elementary and secondary, to focus on the literacy needs in the school district and to talk about goals and ways to help students meet literacy goals that we have set for them. And then it became a lot about implementing Alaska Reads Act when that became I guess a thing from the state. Then we started talking about, well, what does that mean for our school district? What does it mean specifically in my role, elementary, and how can we implement it in our classrooms and school district?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the IDEA team's been around for about a year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this is the second year. We just welcomed new members this last week. So we had a little bit of attrition. So some people kind of moved on to other things, which is great. And then we bring in new people. I kind of like to think of us as like the Fairbanks North Starborough School District think tank.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of
there's a
lot of problems
collaboration,
maybe that are brought to us, but we are a problem solving group of people. So it's made up of classroom teachers, there's administrators, there's people who work in roles like mine in the IDEA team, and we work on the needs related to education at the given time. So right now it's all around literacy. And so how can we work to support teachers and students in the classroom? But it's not just elementary. There's also an IDEA team at the secondary level. And what does literacy look like in secondary? So yeah, it's been a fabulous team of people, and we have created a lot of helpful documents that have been pushed out to schools to help teachers with all of the new legislation that's out there, new assessments, new screeners that are going on in the classrooms.
Yeah, keeping families in mind, students in mind, like what do people need to know? What do they want to know right now? So that community perspective as well. And I've enjoyed collaborating with other educators at different schools and just hearing their perspective too. It's been nice to get the information and to hear about the problems and talk about solving them, but also just working with other colleagues and figuring out like what does our community need, having a realistic look at what can work in a classroom with students.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing I'm really proud of as a district, that we really put our arms around this as an educational community. It wasn't just administrators trying to do it themselves. It wasn't just, hey, teachers, go figure this out yourself. It's great to have the IDEA team to hear that feedback, put plans in place and then go forward and produce things for folks out in the field, which I've heard has been a huge help.
Yeah, it's like when you talk about the feedback, and it does feel like it's nice when we have Shane leading us, but he comes to us knowing that we're the ones in the classroom, we're the ones working with teachers in the classroom and supporting the students on a daily basis. And then also when he talks about taking information back to you. So it's nice to feel heard in that way when he, brings up, hey, Dr. Meinert wants to know this, or can you guys give me an honest look at this? And people are very honest, and it's a very nice space for, expressing how things are going and where the problems are arising.
Well, I'm just so appreciative of folks' willingness to engage in that process and provide the feedback for me. I'm not going to be a great superintendent if I'm not able to listen to everybody around the community and get their input and then put that into action. So thanks again to those that are on the IDEA team. And one of the cool things I thought going into this year, we mentioned new reading curriculum materials, and the IDEA team had a part in like helping teachers get that off the ground. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our school district is actually part of a statewide grant, and we were able to use that grant to purchase new English language art materials. So we have a new program that was put into action in August. It's called Into Reading, and the IDEA team has been a part of it as well. So there's a few teachers that sat on the committee back in the very beginning stages and helping us select which publishing company and which program to choose. So those members actually came from the IDEA team. It wasn't just teachers, there was administrators that were on the committee as well. And so we met and we talked about it, and it went out. Before the selection, all of the options went out to the schools, and the teachers got to look at the different options. They got to, give us the pros and the cons and what they thought would work and what they didn't think would work. And then based on those surveys, we selected Into Reading to become our new program.
Great. And I assume it's aligned to the science of reading. Is that correct?
Of course it is. Yes. That is one thing that is like always at the forefront, right? Are these materials, I'm sorry, I need to adjust this. Are these materials going to be research-based? Are they going to be aligned to the science of reading? Is it going to be direct, explicit instruction throughout? Is there going to be structured literacy taking place? Like, all those boxes need to be checked for us to be able to select these programs. And then we get the programs, and then we also have to provide a lot of professional learning to our teachers for a successful implementation. And it can't just be one time. It has to be ongoing professional learning, like multiple different times throughout, not just the first year of implementation, but it has to be in the, years that follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so true, because every time we had our beginning of the year crash course and I thought, I got a pretty good handle on this. And then the more that I started teaching it, I was like, wait, I have a lot of questions. And then we had our full day training. I was like, all right, now I've got it. But then it's just the more that you go through it for the first time and you find all those questions or try to, ask other colleagues, how are you handling this? How are you doing this? And it's nice to just make sure that you're keeping up with the training or dealing with the questions that come up and maybe issues that come up when trying to teach it in an actual classroom during the day.
Yeah. And we can't always give all of the training up front. You can't front load everything at the beginning when you're implementing a new program. And it doesn't matter if it's literacy, it doesn't matter if it's math or science or social studies, because our brains can only hold so much new information at once. So we did some teacher training in August. And then we did some again in September. And then there will be some continued training throughout this school year. And then there will be again more following the following school year.
That's an important approach, right? After teachers have a chance to work with their students, see what is working out for their classroom, and then coming back to trainings and figuring out other additions that they can put on. It's almost like an onion, as you peel back,
layers.
you just get into another layer. And so I am really curious about the teacher perspective. How is the implementation going for you? I'm married to an elementary teacher. It's a lot right now, but how are you hanging in there with it?
Yeah, it is a lot. And I feel like I'm starting out a lot more slowly than I expected to. And, optimistic me at the end of last school year, we had some extra planning time at our school, and we had support from downtown and the instructional coaches to take a look at the Into Reading program. So it was really nice. We got to spend some more time looking at the online access. I got to spend time with the first grade materials. So of course I mapped out this great plan of what I was going to cover when and how to integrate it with science and social studies, and had it all planned out. And I look at that plan and I was like, what was I thinking? I think you have the end of school year goggles sometimes where you're like, everybody's doing great. And then you kind of forget how it goes at the beginning of the year. But
you forget what first graders look like
in
September, right?
They're kindergartners essentially that are starting.
Absolutely. And so, so starting off the school year, and you take a lot of time setting up expectations, especially in first grade, and getting to know the kids. And at the beginning of the year, I also do a first grade version of the Ready Raven program to review the kindergarten reading skills and solidify those. So I started using pieces of the Into Reading program, and then with the assessment as well, I felt like my schedule was thrown off with that. And so I just remember thinking I should be much further along than this. But when we were talking about it in a staff meeting, and I felt comforted that I was not alone, that many teachers were also like, oh, we're still only on this week of, this module, or we're working through module 1 still. And so I think everyone is wanting to do it well and getting to know it. And because it's not comfortable, you can't just pick it up and go like you're used to. It's got a little bit of a clunky start, and like I said, slowly getting into a groove. But I feel like I'm getting better at it every week. There are components of it that I'm really appreciating. The structured literacy lessons there, that, great review and process there. You can put up the slides and go through them together and get that good in first grade, blending letter sounds. And so it's just figuring out how to hit the pieces that I need to hit in my classroom on a regular basis in a more smooth way. That's where I am with it right now.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I don't have a broad range in elementary education. I'm a secondary person, but I do have kids that are in elementary. I'm married to an elementary educator. And so it's been fun to see this progression of a new way of instruction. And so when you say blending, I know what that means now, but if you would have said that maybe a year ago, I would have no idea what that means. So what does blending mean?
It's when you learn the the sounds that letters make. And then you want to be able to blend those sounds together to figure out a word. And we also use a lot of phonemic awareness exercises, which again is just manipulating those sounds in words and listening to them, breaking words apart, putting them together, switching out sounds. And all of those are good exercises to practice for students, especially in the early reading stages, but really, I mean, all throughout elementary, really, especially. And we do a lot of those exercises where they listen to the sounds and then they have to blend the sounds together to hear the word. And then of course they apply it to their reading where they can see, oh, this letter represents this sound. And then I can blend that with the next sound that's represented by this letter and use that to then read a whole word. And so we're doing a lot of practice with that at the beginning of first grade. And we use the Hegarty Phonemic Awareness Program in addition to the Into Reading too. So they're getting a lot of practice with it.
Love that practice. And they're not just guessing at different words, right?
There's no guessing in reading.
Yeah.
We're not guessing.
No, yeah. And it's like students will try to. And or we'll go through, it's still interesting to me. I mean, we'll go through all these letter sounds. We'll start to look at how they fit together to make words. And I'm like, okay, now let's read this sentence. And kids will say, I can't read. And I'm like, well, we were just doing that the whole time. I was like, let's take a look at it. We'll look at this word. You know, what is this sound? What is this sound? And then they realize like, oh yeah, okay, I can read this word. But initially looking at a sentence, they're like, nope, not for me. I'm not a reader yet. But it's that, that practice and getting them to see what you are doing is you are sounding out the word. We're not guessing. And even today, in my intervention group, we were going through that and the students were looking at this reading passage. So it was, a little bit more daunting, but it's just we took it one word at a time and they realized like, oh, I can figure out these words. I don't need to guess through them. Or I would ask a question about what we read and they would first just start to like just guess answers. And I said, oh, we can go back and figure that out. Let's do that.
I love that confidence building that you're doing with the students because they don't think they can do it a lot of times. But I mean, over and over again, we're showing, little by little, we're just getting there. And as they build up that confidence and that fluency comes and other skills. So that's awesome.
I think that with Into Reading and how it is structured and the components that came with it, it's making it much easier for teachers to do this with their students. So with the structured literacy piece and the foundational skills, the lesson slides were already prepared for them. They didn't have to go and create these slides to do the phonemic awareness and do the phonics with their students. This was a part of the program, and that was one of the big things for us is like we need to make ease of use for teachers, and we have to have components in the program that they will be using with their students. It needs to be interactive and widely accessible to everybody, and I think that is one of the things that Into Reading does provide.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I want to segue us a little bit into assessment. So we just finished the fall assessment cycle. So can either of you talk about some of the assessments that we're doing specifically with our K-3 students?
Yeah, I feel like that's been,
it's been our life for the last month.
So we started out with the iReady assessments, and that's the program that we use to teach our math curriculum. But there is also an iPad intervention reading program as well as math too. So they take a diagnostic in both areas on the iPad in reading and math. And that then creates what's called their MyPath, and it's their own learning lessons and goals based on how they did on the diagnostic. So, and that is, it's always an adventure. iPad testing at the beginning of first grade, but it is not timed. And so the students, they can take their time with it. We can break it up into different sections. And then it provides a good look at the areas in math, like where they're scoring, where they need assistance. And that's the nice thing to give to parents is you can show, it's not just a score. I mean, they get a score, but it really breaks it down into which areas they're struggling with in reading as well. So that was the first assessment that we did. And then we moved into the M-class assessment, and that those are quicker timed assessments, and they're given one-on-one to a student. So it's given by a teacher, given by someone who can work directly with that student. And I know in first grade, it looks at their phonemic awareness. So you give them a word, see if they can break it into sounds successfully. They try to, decode nonsense words. And that the reason why they're nonsense is it just gives them, it really assesses their skills in being able to put sounds together to create a word, and also assesses their letter sounds. We also looked at letter naming, so naming the letters, and then being able to just quickly recognize words and read a passage too. And so those were all timed tests. And because of that, it just gave us this picture of, again, same thing, like where are their strengths, where are they struggling?
Great. And M class, right? That's a last screener that we were talking about. Is that the one that's required by the state?
Yeah, so it is required for our school district. It is given, all those measures are given to K through 3 students. And with the scores, then we look at the scores and we decide, okay, what sort of interventions, what sort of help are we going to have to offer to our students based on the possibility of a student's reading deficiency or lack thereof. All students in our school district, K-5 at this point in time, will be receiving some sort of reading intervention, a walk-to intervention. So it might be to help them because they're struggling, or it might just be to increase their reading ability. So if your student is not struggling in reading, that's fabulous and wonderful, but we still want to grow them. So during walk to intervention time, they still will be going to a smaller group to receive additional instruction in reading, because everybody can always grow in reading.
Yeah, definitely. Lifelong readers is what we're trying to build, that passion for reading. What do some of the interventions look like at your school? Are you doing a walk-to reading, or are there other interventions that you're providing?
Yes, we started our walk-to intervention. So the students, all students in the school are getting intervention 30 minutes every day. And some of the interventions we're using, I know in first grade a lot, we're using UFly. And that is, like I said, it's just a really nice program. It focuses on, a lot of the early reading skills, like a lot of the phonics, blending, reading. And so it goes through like a lot of the things that we were talking about with into reading as well. But then you can find the level like for your group. So based on the M class assessments, and I know like second and third grade, I believe had their own additional M class assessments as well. But based on the M class results, like they had kind of an area of need. And if we had to then do additional assessments to figure out, where their biggest need was, we did that, and then found an intervention and found like where in that intervention to start, because they're like UFly has so many different levels and lessons. So you figure out, okay, these students all need to work on this, put them in a group. We're starting where they need to start and working on those skills. I know some of the groups are using phonics for reading, which is for some of the older elementary students, and works on, again, the phonics skills that they need to work on, and very leveled. So finding their level and then grouping kids of a similar level so that they are where they need to be. And then some students are benchmark or above, doing well. And so during that time, they are, they're working on more grade level skills, maybe comprehension, but more either on grade level or maybe even slightly advanced, so that they are getting what they need as well.
Okay. So if I'm a parent and, we just went through the M class screening, and particularly in kindergarten or first grade, my student's not, where I really want them to be, like, what do I do as a parent? Can I help them at home with their literacy strategies?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I know that I've had parents reach out to me, and then the nice thing about M class results is that they have a little page that breaks it down for parents. And I always appreciate when these assessment companies when they make it a little bit more parent friendly, because I think so many times parents get the results and have a hard time interpreting it, and they probably still have questions, but it at least like it gives a brief definition of each area, where they scored in that area. But then because there are several tests, and then on the back of their little Home Connect paper, the nice thing is it says this is what your child needs to work on, rather than like try to hit all these areas, at home every day. It's like, this is what your child needs to work on. Here's some activities. And the nice thing about those activities they are things they can implement in what they're doing at home already. A lot of it is like, hey, while you're doing this, take a look at this. And then it provides more resources for them if they go to the website. But I know that I've had parents reach out to me and ask me, more directly about what they can work on. And so then the teacher can provide materials at their level for what they need to practice at home.
Yeah, that's great.
I think the Home Connect letter that is generated directly from M-Class and is individual to each student's test score is very helpful to parents. And I'm hoping that parents find that it is beneficial to them.
Been helpful for me.
So when you see it and you read it, you go, oh yeah, I get that. I could be having my student identify the letter, but they also need to say the sound. So it's not just saying the letter name. You can't just say B. We also need to know that B says B. Or it's not just that G is the name of the letter, but it says G. And so always giving those very explicit ideas to parents so they know really how to support their children at home. And I think the other thing is making sure that your children see that like reading or literacy is important, so that they see that you are a reader as well as the family member, that they know that there's going to be time set aside. It does not have to be 30 minutes. It can be a 10 to 12 minute time period where everybody is doing nothing but reading something. It doesn't have to be a chapter book. It can be the newspaper. It can be a magazine, but we're all engaged in some sort of literacy activity that is very age appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Home Connect. I actually feel like that's one of the better resources from an assessment company that I've seen.
I agree.
Usually there's so much technical jargon in it that I'm like, I have no idea how to help my kids with this, but they break it down. It's self-explanatory. Even though I'm in education, I'm not versed in elementary education and teaching kids how to read. And it's giving me strategies to work with my students. So Amplify, Home Connect, can't say enough good things about it. I've also mentioned in the past the iReady My Path. I think that's another easy one if you do have an internet connection at home and some kind of device that your student can be on. Working through that is another great intervention in keeping those skills going.
Yeah, because if you have internet connection at home and you have a device, your student can be doing their iReady Math, and they can be doing their iReady Reading My Path at home. And it is at your child's instructional level, because it is helping to either fill instructional like gaps or holes, or it's helping to extend them. It's doing one of the two. And that's what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
We're just trying to grow learners.
Yeah. And if you're a parent out there and you've checked out the resources and you still want more, who should parents connect with in that instance?
In my role, I always say, please go to your child's classroom teacher.
Yeah, beautiful.
That is the number one person that you should connect with first for everything. Like, make and connect with your child's classroom teacher or the school to kind of build those relationships first. If that doesn't happen, you can always connect with me, but I'm going to try to turn you back to your child's school first.
Yeah, no, I think that was a softball over to you. That you answered correctly. That was your quiz for the day. But yeah, definitely want parents to connect with our experts in the classroom. We have amazing educators here in the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District. And man, they've come such a long ways too in such a short amount of time in terms of their reading instruction that they're providing. We've always had great reading instruction here in Fairbanks, but we're just moving the needle that much more, and it's been fun to see the growth.
Yeah, and the other thing, the classroom teacher sees the child in the classroom working all day and has a really good picture of where they are, and the assessment gives a snapshot too, and it's good to have that data, but the classroom teacher knows all the details and even more, how they approach reading in the classroom, how they feel about it. And so just having a better idea of what they need to work on and what they do struggle with maybe during the lessons or just throughout the school day.
Love it. All right, one more pop quiz before we wrap it up today. And I didn't even prep you guys for this, so I feel a little guilty. But favorite book?
Oh my goodness. I read so much,
I know.
Luke.
Oh man.
Oh, does it have to be like?
It doesn't.
I love authors.
Okay.
So
Favorite author.
right now, I love to also leave educations behind when I
Yep.
go home, and I like to read things that are pretty fluffy. So I really like to read Nicholas Sparks books.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, you got to get away from your work. I mean,
do.
reading for enjoyment, right?
That is my reading for enjoyment.
absolutely.
I read so many educational books. There's always one. I love Catelyn Tucker, and I will read her forever and ever. But then I love to just pick up the book that is a Nicholas Sparks book. But you want to know what else I love to read? I know this is more than one. I love to bake and I love to cook. So there are probably more cooking magazines on my nightstand than anybody would care to know.
I love it. Well, next time you
really
come on the podcast, you're going to have to bring some cooking for us so we can sample that. I really like brownies. I gave a shout out to a barbecue club recently, so anything barbecue. But
yeah. You could, every time you should just pop upstairs every once. I get downstairs from you, but Jimmy in LMS, he's been the recipient lately.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
Start bringing that upstairs. All right.
That's so funny. I read a lot of Nicholas Sparks books and then kind of moved away from that. Oh, I know. It's always one of those things when people ask me my favorite book, I go like, oh, how can you pick just one? And then I'm like, do you want like kids book? Do you want educational book? Do you want, I think for the longest time, my favorite book was The Time Traveler's Wife. But then I read such a variety. So then I go like, which genre do you want me to focus on? And I have several cookbooks as well. That's one thing my husband will go, you ordered another cookbook? I'm like, but this one's different because look at what it focuses on. And I cook out of all of them. So, and he does too. And but then I like to read nonfiction. And then after a while, if I read too much nonfiction, then I feel like I need a break from all this and I need to escape to like fiction or fantasy books. So yeah, it's very tricky to pick a favorite.
All right. Well, you guys will pass.
Wait. Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, softball over to me. So nonfiction right now, Atomic Habits by James Clear, like super good one. I just
really
keep
good.
Coming back to it. Has great strategies for building healthy habits, which I'm trying to work on in my life. And then my son and I just finished Hatchet, which is such a great book. And like I hadn't read it for like a super long time. And so it was fun to go back to it. And I forgot so many parts of it. And both of us were just like, oh, we have to get to the end. And so, we're excited to have finished it. We just finished it recently. And then maybe check out some of the other series with Paulson, which we hadn't before. There's some other books that he's written that I guess take Brian's travels to
a
other
little
places.
bit further. Yeah. What about My Side of the Mountain? So it's very similar in that like adventure piece with a boy, Jean Craig George, I believe.
Okay.
But it is set in the Catskill Mountains on the East Coast. I mean, it is.
amazing. Into Thin Air is a great one,
right? Yeah.
So.
But
no, it's funny. I feel the same way about read alouds in the classroom, though, too. When you, even if it's a book that I have read over and over, when you get to share it with a new class and see how new it is for them,
it's so fun.
Like the best ever.
Yeah, seeing it through their eyes.
Yeah.
It's really great. Well, thanks for putting me on the spot. I got to take the quiz too, which was super great. I didn't know. Typical teacher. I was just going to throw it out to you guys, but I'm glad you turned it around.
No, it's a hard question.
As well. And so just really want to thank both of you for the work that you're doing here in Fairbanks. I know it's a heavy lift this year, but you guys are knocking it out of the park and doing an amazing job. Thank you for coming into the podcast and sharing with folks to give kind of an insight into what's happening in your classroom with the implementation of it into reading. And the Alaska Reads Act. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for inviting us.
All right. Well, this concludes the Alaska EdVenture podcast, and thanks so much for tuning in.